So, good evening. I have been looking forward to this meeting for a really long time. And so Rita, it's so good to see you. Yay. And so for those who are not normally here, it's great. Good to have a party. And I think that the board has been really wanting to have to see some of the teachers. So to see so many of you and is just above and beyond. It's great. So I just want to let you know, I was waiting for a quorum. I have received my quorum. And so I am going to officially start the meeting. And today is May 8th. It is 6:04, and it is my honor and privilege to start the Groton Board of Education Committee of the Whole meeting. That is my call to order. I'll take a motion to accept the minutes of April 17th, the 2023 meeting. I've got a second from Andrea. So Dean and Andrea, Ms. Jones.
Got it.
Do I have any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the approval of the meeting minutes of the April 17th meeting, please say aye.
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 Abstain? That motion has carried. Thank you. The rest of our time together is to go through the reading, our reading K through 3 program. That's kind of why you guys are here. It's not like you're going to teach us how to play volleyball or anything, so don't worry. We're going to be really specific about that. It's so good to see you, my friend. So let me just orient a little bit, and then Susan, I'm going to pass it on to you. But we had, this has really been spurred on by several different things, as far as I can tell. There's been a lot of things in the news. I'm sorry, but my friend Andrea has become like my cough drop junkie, and so she just put 10 in front of me. So that's why I started to laugh. I'm not laughing at you guys. And so part of it is because it's very political right now. Through the nation, everyone is really very concerned about the reading skills of kiddos. Hi, Bev, it's good to see you. The reading skills of the people across the nation. But in our regular board meeting in March, we had several parents come and talk about their concerns about the K through 3 reading program, and specifically about the waiver that Susan brought in, and so or sent to the state. And my understanding, it was one request of a waiver out of how many school districts?
100 and there were 99 when I was at the state capitol. 99 were submitted on the due date. 50 had asked for an extension and did not want to take one of the reading programs that they were mandating. And so, so last I knew, I called Fran Rabinowitz, and she said she's in charge of Connecticut Association of School Superintendents. And I actually spoke with her today. And there were, out of 169, although they add up those districts differently. So I've had different numbers for the final number, but there were at least 150 or more that had asked for a waiver or extension.
So something is happening. And so what we made the decision was, as a board, is for us to have a much better understanding about the K through 3 learning program, and to hear all the good work that you do. A shout out to both Susan and Phil and her staff. One, for being here tonight, for creating a sense of helping us understand literacy in the K through 3. But the packet of information that we got was incredible. It was informative. It was I'm going to use the word dense, but not in a
it was dense.
Not in a I couldn't read it way. But I also am just so very excited. You guys may not know, but there was a glossary put together. And for those of us who are not in education, I just am so
right.
very
and some frequently asked questions, and those are the kind of things I'd like to add to our website, where we really have truly put up all the information. And I think we should continue, because I think that it needs to be out there for public to see.
So that is the backdrop. That is the field that I'm hoping that we're going to operate in tonight. And so at this point, I am going to have Susan and her staff speak with and to the board around this program or the programs.
So Dr. Piazza and I have really been looking forward to this opportunity to address the board and the public and anybody who's out there online to talk a little bit about our K-3 Groton Public Schools phonics and the curriculum work that's been worked on this year. Really, it was early on in the year that teachers were coming to me and talking to me about recognizing gaps, especially after the pandemic. And I know people don't want to hear about the pandemic anymore, but especially speech and language was really impacted, and phonemic awareness was impacted, and phonics was impacted. And then, of course, there was legislation from the state. And really, there's nothing that we can't believe in the state. They want all the same things we all want. We want our children reading. We want them reading in first grade. We want them really reading proficiently by third grade. You don't want to wait any longer, because if you do, that means that it really can have concerns later on. So our teachers had come to us. We heard about the shifting of the balance. I bought the book. Beth, and Katie had also bought the book. So now we bought the book for all of our teachers, and we have a book study that we're going to be doing some PLC, so everybody understands this. There's a master class done by Connecticut Association of School Superintendents and the CSE, Connecticut State Department of Ed, and we are in the third cohort, and that includes superintendent, assistant superintendent, director of pupil personnel, our principals, our literacy coaches. So our whole literacy team will be able to participate in this. It's a 5 full day. And then you have a designated specialist, consultant, reading consultant, and superintendent who comes out to the district. And then they help with the implementation, and they just really monitor to see and answer any questions that we have. So we're really feeling very good that that is happening. I want to also go back a little bit to say that our district, and I have Val here because she has been a principal in all our schools. She helped me with the first grant in literacy that we wrote, and she was working side by side with the evaluator, monitoring the terrific growth and development in the data. So the district has always believed, though, in phonics instruction and phonemic awareness. The literacy curriculum was actually developed or redeveloped in 2014-15 based on the Common Core standards or the Connecticut Core standards, and always included the essential foundational skills to assist students as readers, writers, and speakers. This is what was sent to the State Department as our reading waiver, along with some of the new things that we were going to work on. One of the things that we've been looking on in this development of the curriculum in phonics is the UFly Foundational, and this has been purchased for our teachers. We've gotten them first for our literacy specialists to take a look at. You're going to hear more about that because we have a couple teachers here who are also literacy specialists now, consultants, and they have absolutely tried some of these out, and so have some of our teachers, and have found really good results with that. So we've learned a lot in this year. I would say it's really been a wonderful year of learning. Not that we didn't know anything, we knew a lot, but I think we've learned even more. So really the strategies that have always been used in Groton and that are espoused to are professional development, continuous ongoing professional development, embedded coaching for our teachers, using decodable text. So we've really purchased a plethora of decodable text to add to our classroom libraries, and this is really important. Finding a universal screener that really works. We've always used DIBELS 8, but it's been more for when a child needs to have intervention. So using that with all kids and gathering that data, and I think we shared with the board recently the data that we were gathering from that. We're going to be doing an NGR data, and I've heard a couple teachers across the room who can't wait to see how their kids have done on that screener, because they've really been noticing all along how their readers are growing this year. And they needed to grow. We needed to accelerate learning. There had been a time where speech and language was taught behind a mask and things were blurred, and kids were here half time. So we really need to accelerate their learning to make sure that they're ready to go. But I just go back to the belief statements, you know, what that legislation was and what it wanted for all. We believe in this. I believe it as a superintendent, we believe it as a staff, but we want all students to be reading by the end of first grade and independently by third. We realize that there are some obstacles and disabilities, and Denise is here to talk to us a little bit about dyslexia and a couple other reading disabilities. But we need to give students more support beyond the core instruction to meet their needs. And there's a lot of kids that do get intervention or have resource early on to help support them. And sometimes a differentiated instructional technique. One size never fits all. If you've had two children, one may be reading right away and you don't even know how they picked it up, and the other might not be. And, you know, they learn to walk and talk and tie their shoes all at different times. So we know that in childhood development, there is a continuum, and that we just have to be aware of that. But then we also have to give the kids what they need if they don't have it. So we believe in a strong literacy curriculum, and that's what we have been working on, making it even stronger as we shift the balance to more structured literacy approach. And we also believe that school leaders also need to be knee deep into this work. So hence the master class. My biggest belief, though, is about the staff you see around this room are highly qualified teachers, literacy interventionists, reading consultants, special educators, and tutors. All need to be available for our students. That's the biggest bang. I say that at budget time, but that's what we give our kids. And so I'm really proud to be here. I don't think there's a magic bullet, but I do think that there is a pathway to making something much better. And we're going to show you some of that tonight, some of that hard work that has gone into this. It's not all done yet. I don't think it's ever done. I think we're constantly making improvements and making things better. So, and then Phil, you were going to just talk a little bit about some research.
Well, I was just going to make a point, and one of my functions, I believe, is to, and one of my, as twisted as it is, one of the things I really love to do a lot is really look at the research and look at what's available there. I know, and Kim said it at the start, we gave you a lot of information, right? And how many times did I say to Chelsea, wow, we're giving them a lot, giving them a lot to read. So we do realize that there's a lot out there, and I'm sure there's a lot more that, so I constantly try to find out where the research is coming from. I try to do a little bit of deeper dive as to who's bringing the research to our table. I listen to, all sides, podcasts, and I want to be that conduit for all of you here. I try to be that for the teachers and the principals and for Susan to sort of bring it to the table to help us get better. Because I do, that's one of the things I want to keep doing, is trying to find ways for us to improve our instruction, for our kids. I just wanted to bring, one of the articles that Susan provided for you. It's called Phonics First, ? And it's from, the excerpt here is from something called the Marshall Memo that we use. It's a great resource because it does take all the stuff that's out there and it gives us nice summaries of that. And of course, it always gives you a link to the article it comes from. So,
and the full research piece.
Right. And so I've been trying to do a deeper dive on that. This is, written by three people, Ryan King, Kiruli, and Risco, from Clemson, University of Kentucky, and Vanderbilt's, teacher education and ed leadership departments. And it just really, I think it gives a nice balanced look at both sides of the issue. It really talks about stuff that I know we've been reading a lot about in the literature that I've read. Talks a lot about the three, the three keys, which I know you're going to hear more about later, is the scope of things, which is, what we're going to be teaching. The sequence, which is very important in terms of the order that things are going to be taught. And then, of course, how it's going to be taught, having those solid instructional routines in the classroom. And again, I think you'll hear some of that this morning. So I really want to bring your focus to that as you're listening tonight. And really, my hope is that we'll continue to educate ourselves and listen to the research. And I'll try to provide those. And if you have research you want to send to me, I would love to see it and break it down for the board as well and at future meetings. I really want to listen. I love listening to the people that are going to be presenting to you tonight. They're very talented and they're very skilled in what they do. And I think you'll hear that in all that they present tonight. And then, we're always, I'm one of those people that are always wary too of of different things. Like I said, I try to do a deeper dive, see where things are coming from. We know this topic could be highly politicized. There's a lot of money to be made on both sides of the equation. So again, that's why I try to look at who's bringing the research to the table and how deep that research goes. So I really just encourage you to listen to our plan, and ask your questions. We collect those questions, I think, and we'll keep getting your answers as we move forward. But I've done a deeper dive into the article itself. It's about 20 some pages long. But if it's something somebody who's interested in kind of walking through, I could definitely do that with you. But I thought this was good to include because again, it seemed to be someone who didn't have anything to gain on either side, and it sort of focused on the actual teaching and scope and sequence, like I talked about. So I do want to hand it off to the people who are doing the work and in front of our kids, and I'd like to invite them to the table, if that's okay.
Absolutely. I don't mean for us to, there might be people who don't want to be so squishy, and I'm totally understanding of that, but especially if there's a part of you that are breaking up in terms of presentations, so please come join us at the table. I mean, more than welcome to stay by the window, but whatever you are the most comfortable with. Thank you.
You guys know how they figured this out. They said, we got this.
Usual spot.
The presentation.
Hi, everybody. Yeah.
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 Caitlin, do you have the presentations, or I can do it from mine? It doesn't matter to me.
It would probably be easier on yours.
I will do that then. No problem.
Thank you so much.
So I think while we're transitioning, if you guys could just I will do a quick introduction for myself. There are several board members who are on that I would love for them to introduce themselves, but I'll start at this end. Okay.
Dean T-Foss, board member.
Yeah, I can invite you. Kim. And Kim Shepherdson Watson, and then Bev, you're the first on our screen. There you are.
Bev Washington.
Thank you, Bev. William.
Thank everybody for coming and sharing whatever knowledge you are going to give to us tonight. Thank you very much.
It's William Horgan, yes, and I'm with Beverly. I'm very excited about hearing everybody's input.
Thank you. And Jay?
Jay Whiteloff, and again, thank you all. We've been looking forward to this meeting for some time.
I do know that Liz will not be able to join us tonight, and Matthew said that Matthew Schulman, who is our 9th board member, will be arriving probably in about 40 to 45 minutes. So he'll be here as well. So you'll actually, well, Liz is not here, but you'll have 8 and 9 of us, which is great. So,
and you guys might want to share who you are and what school you're from.
Yeah, that would be great.
Start with Aaron.
My name is Aaron Brzezinski, and I'm from Groton.
I'm Amanda Cheeson, and I'm Allie Merrill. I'm from Thames River. Hi, I'm Carrie Leff. I'm also from Thames River.
And Corey Mott from Thames River.
Awesome. And we have 2 other teachers over here. Jeff Hurler and
But that's not your name. Your name is Beth. Yes, please. Let's do that.
Sure. Introduce everyone.
First off, I'm a principal at Captain Philosophy. Dean Giordano, principal at Thames River.
Who likes to raise her voice a lot.
yeah.
Val Mel, principal at the
Steve Wheeler, principal. Steven Septian, principal at Groton. Ryan Cheney, principal at
Okay.
That's important.
Johnson. Mr. Johnson, I'm right. We just wanted to make sure everyone gets introduced to them. I'm glad that you're here. All right.
Hi.
Hi.
We're missing a vital person today, so Brenda Borelli is the 5th reading specialist in Houston Catholic Gymnasium. She couldn't be here today. But I wanted to start by saying, like, what Susan had said, this year has been stressful, to say the least, and we feel that weight, and I think we, really, as a team, talk about how we can alleviate that stress. And I will say, now that it's towards the end of the year, that stress has decreased. And I think for Erin and Amanda and Allie and Brenda, who's not here, like we, feel really lucky to have collaborated and made such great work in 1 year. And we're excited to show you that and also show you what we're forward to. So, so as far as our agenda, we do this a lot when we're all together. We always go back to the why. Why are we doing this? Why do students need this at certain times? So we wanted to start with that and give you some of the things that we utilize and find really important in our work. Then we want to move into our commitment, which is completely there, and we wanted to tell you a little bit about what we have committed to this year and then what we'll move forward with. And then we'll share what we've been working on. We have a lot to share, a lot to tell you. And then looking ahead, we're very aware that there's a lot of levels and tiers of change that go into this. We're talking about changing communication and habits and all kinds of things. So we just want you to know that we know that there's a need for that to happen in our curriculum. And we want our curriculum to be implemented successfully. So we want to share, when we look ahead, we want to share that forward thinking. Like we really have tried to anticipate and leave most all stones unturned as we think about how this work can be sustainable and long-term for Groton. So the Scarborough Reading Rope, this is very familiar to us as educators and especially us as reading specialists. This is our guide to instruction and intervention. It's a visual representation of all the strands that are really interconnected and dependent upon each other to make a successful reader. So when we really think about the why we are doing this, find all this work, it can be broken down really easily. So kids students, readers need to be able to decode, and they need to be able to comprehend. And so those two components, that word recognition and the language comprehension, they are part of our tier 1 literacy instruction. We see it in Groton all the time. So a lot of us, this is very familiar to all of your teachers. As a team, we really moved our lens to those youngest readers, those K-2 readers, because we know those foundational skills, phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, and phonics are so vital to even move into the language comprehension. Because if they're not making meaning out of words, they're not making meaning out of text. So this is our map, this is our guide. When we are in a room together and we're talking about ideas, I'm looking at this guy who says it all the time, remember the why. We always go back to, remembering the why, and all those strands together make a strong rope. But if one's frayed, if one's not strong, that's where, as educators, we need to go back and repair. So we're really committed to the work. We've said that. We talk about it all the time. And I almost want to call this slide our non-negotiables, really, because when we sit down and we plan, what comes up all the time? Teacher feedback. Every time we've gotten together, whether it was September or now, what do the teachers think? What are the teachers doing? How do we go back and ask the teachers? What do the teachers think? Like we're constantly trying to put a pulse on what the teachers need, how the teachers feel, so that we can then come together and do that work for them. But it's plotted throughout the year. It's not just what do they need at the beginning of the year. We are constantly, trying to include them when it feels when we feel like we have something to share with them and something we need their feedback for. So that is something that we're committed to. Big thank you to Susan and Phil for just allowing us the time to meet and plan. We are very aware.
And any resources you ask for.
How much our principals have sacrificed for us to get together. Yeah. We sacrifice, and feeling of wanting to be in two places at the same time is very difficult, but we know where we are is really where we need to be. And I'm just really, you know, proud of our team for committing to that. So thank you, Susan and Phil, for giving us room. And our administration, I mean, again, a non-negotiable, as much as we think about the teachers, we think about how do we bring this back to the principal? How do we bring this back to our admin so that we can sit and stand side by side and deliver this information? Because it's what we live and breathe every day, but we're very aware that they, you know, have a whole building to take care of, and they need to think about how everyone's going to get this information. Trusting the research and oh yeah.
So 1 second.
Yeah.
Let me just, how would you like us to, would you like us to have present for a couple minutes and then see if there's any questions? Do you want us to write, do you want us to raise our hands?
Whatever you like.
How about we get through the whole slide?
Sure, that's fine. Yeah. So let's do that. Okay. So trusting the research and the resources, we're going to speak to that a little bit more, but really going back to all that, you know, evidence-based scientific research that led us into these decisions. And then those frequent meetings with the ELA team, we're really committed to continuing those and trying to figure out a way that we can, you know, balance our jobs in the building, but we're definitely going to need to fix that as well.
So Rita?
So yeah, my question, a couple of them. How are your students, how is your placement presented to you? How do you work with the students?
Yeah.
And, you know, and then you take them out of the classroom? And
no, absolutely. Yeah. So at the beginning of the year, and I speak for all of us, we're very, you know, similar in our jobs and how we present, you know, how we get data and then choose our groups. But our models are different at different buildings based on the need of each building. But the majority of us look at the data that comes in at the beginning of the year. And we have screeners that we put into place with students at the beginning of the year, whether it's depending on the grade level, like whether it's a phonological awareness screener or a phonics screener or a comprehension screener. And then we take that data and then we decide which kids are our tier 1 students, kids that we stay in the classroom and instruct, and which kids are those kids that we're going to have on a 6 to 8 week cycle where we pull out of the classroom in the afternoon in what we call like our SRBI time or upgrade. Because as we know, like that instruction, that intervention needs to be, we do 4 times a week, 40 minutes a day. So there's this pocket of kiddos that are our lowest intervention where the gap is so big that then we are doing small group intervention outside of the classroom in the hopes that they'll transfer those skills back into the classroom.
But they don't remove them from the core. They go into the core to support, and then they take them for additional time.
Everyone's going at the same time. Specialized math intervention. It's built into our schedule.
And I noticed that there were 2 do all the schools have 2 or one?
Yeah.
One, you know, one.
Carrie, the classroom teacher.
Classroom teacher.
Classroom teacher.
And classroom teacher. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they have interventionists as well, Rita. So they really are part coach, part interventionist, part enrichment specialist. So they do coach too, but they do spend a lot of time with intervention and helping support the whole intervention team with the principals.
So there are 5.
One of each. Yeah.
One of each.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bev?
Thank you, Kim. Can you tell me how this plan, I don't know if you want to call it a plan, but how this is different from what you're already doing?
Absolutely. Yeah, Beverly, if it's okay, if you don't mind, we're getting to that slide in a minute. So I want to write down your question and remember it, but we're actually moving into a slide that might be helpful. So if we can move on to the next slide, I think we might answer your question.
Okay, so this is kind of a heavy slide, so hopefully the team will help me out with this because this is what we've been doing all year, what we've been working on. So actually, Carrie and I came to Susan in the beginning of the year, and we sat down with her and we said, we need to do something about our phonics instruction. Do we have your blessing to explore some different curriculum? Because what we're using right now, we don't feel like it's meeting the needs of the students in our building. And we met as a district and representatives from each school came together and we shared our concerns about what phonics instruction looked like currently, what we could do better. We brainstormed all the things we would like to have in a perfect curriculum. And then we started really doing some research. So we looked at foundations, which a lot of teachers in Groton were familiar with, and we looked at the scope and sequence and the routines that teachers really liked in foundations. They liked that it was easy to implement and that the students were familiar with the routines. They didn't have to come up with a new lesson plan every day. They just knew how to teach phonics and they could do it every day. They also liked the magnet boards and some of the other materials that came with foundations. We looked at Wilson and we looked at the scope and sequence and made sure that what we ended up making had all of the phonics features that were part of Wilson as well. We did take a deeper dive into the Teachers College phonics curriculum, and we recognized what we had concerns with, and we pulled out the things that we really liked about it. But ultimately, we kind of fell into this University of Florida curriculum, which Carrie Leff had heard about from one of her professors, and it is a wonderfully written scope and sequence that does have all of the phonics features that are expected students in kindergarten to second grade to be introduced to during their time in school. It has routines that are built in that are very teacher friendly. It covers phonological awareness. It has part words or sight word instruction built in. It has decodable word lists. It has decodable passages. It has many opportunities for review and practice built in. So it's very user friendly. And Susan said, you know what, if this is something that sounds like it's going to be good for your classes and good for teachers, let's try it out. So Carrie jumped on board right away, and I'll let her speak for a little bit and then we'll go back to, she ultimately piloted and her class
around the district too. Yeah.
What it looks like.
Yeah, I did. And I should also note that, I mean, my whole grade level team was really on board with this. And I'm just really grateful that we just had an entire grade level and teachers, you know, both above and below us.
And I just want to add that we really ask people to commit as a grade level, because I think it's really essential when we're trying new things to kind of do it together, and our teachers do that anyway.
So it really was a team effort. And I will say at first I was a little bit concerned that kids would find this boring, right? That, you know, phonics time would become something that wasn't fun. You know, the program that we had been using involved, you know, a cute little mascot. There were a lot of opportunities for, you know, like we would sit and like maybe play a game on the rug, and that was fun. But I was struggling to notice whether or not kids were transferring that into what we need them to be doing in text, in writing. And that was the piece that was really missing. I think Allie and I really were noticing that. So I was a little bit nervous at first. And I can tell you that it couldn't be further from the truth. My kids love phonics time. And the power of is that they are recognizing that they all can read. We're really giving them the tools that get them excited to become true readers. The program is really multi-sensory, so there's opportunities for visual, auditory, tactile learning. They have these great letter boards that we use.
She made herself.
I did. Because I was really excited about it. But, you know, so they're building words. It's totally systematic. The routines are predictable. So there's no question about what we do during phonics time. It's 20 minutes of our day, and it's probably the most important time of the day in first grade. So there's no room for, we don't have time to fit phonics in, or, oh, I didn't have this material today. I don't think we're getting to that part of the lesson. And the kids are just really, really excited about it. And then I think the most powerful piece for me has just been the transfer, is that I have kids who are looking at, you know, the sound wall that we've built, and then the tiles on their board, and they're saying, oh, there's that AI vowel team. I know that long vowel sound, and look, here it is in my book today. And so it's really, really empowering for kids. And then not only in reading, but in writing too. I think teachers struggle sometimes with spelling. That's sometimes the last thing to come. And this has given kids the tool to both decode and to spell. So it really is addressing that piece of the rope, right? In that word recognition, with the phonological awareness and with the sight recognition, that these words are becoming part of their sight vocabulary. And I just want to share really quickly, because I think this is all great. But what really was the most powerful for me is the growth I'm seeing with my actual students. So I had just brought a sample of work from a kiddo. I had asked the parents today, I said, could I just share your child's work, because this is really a testament to the kind of instruction that we've implemented. So this was a student who was reading pretty significantly below grade level at the beginning of the year. You know, I'm not going to talk about levels, but I'm just going to kind of show you an example of the kind of book that he was reading. You know, some sight words, it was patterned. He was really over relying on the pictures and not really attempting to print. And he's now reading at grade level. So he's now, you know, reading books, you know, like tree books that you could find in the library. And there's just nothing more exciting or powerful than a kid that can pick up a book in the library and bring it to you and just be so happy to be able to read it. And that's because he's attending to print. He's looking at words. He knows what those parts of words are.
Did he use a lot of decodable text in the beginning?
Tons.
Yeah.
Tons
So that's the other thing,
text.
making sure that we have plenty of those decodable text for learning.
Yeah. This is first grade. So tons of decodable text. And the nice thing is that this is tier 1, right? So this is what I'm doing with all of my class in phonics time. But then, you know, this child was in an intervention group, but then he was also in my, you know, small reading group. So we were able to take what we were doing in tier 1. And even though at the time the phonics was a little bit above his instructional level, the beauty of it was that we were talking about looking at words, right? That, you know, they're all the parts of the book are important, but the first thing you have to look at are those letters. We have to know what those, you know, the sounds that those letters make. And then that gap started to close and close and close and close. And so, you know, and now he's excited. I mean, that's even in his spelling, it's just beautiful, you know.
He's more excited.
So I don't know. I think both of us, but you can see kind of like, this is what his writing looked like at the beginning of the year. And this is what his writing looks like. This was today. I went on the free fall. It was scary. You know, he's got all those vowel teams in there. He's got sight words. He's got capitalization. So it's just,
how about the periods?
Not yet. Not harder. But just, you know, truly a testament to the power of something that's structured and systematic. And kids really do get excited about it. So it's been a great experience.
So we looked at the scope and sequence of UFly, and no program we've discovered is a perfect program. So we have modified it a little bit to include some phonics features that are not included in the UFly. Blends, for example, were not part of the instruction, so we added in a unit on blends. Contractions were not in the manual, so we added a unit on contractions. And then we're going to be doing this in 3rd grade as well. Phonics instruction will be part of 3rd grade, and the UFly manual is for K-2. So we have extended our scope and sequence to include roots and prefixes and suffixes that were also not included in the program. So we are modifying the actual progression of phonics skills a little bit, but we're sticking with we're using the outline, and we're using the routine and the majority of their sequence, but we're adding in some things that we found were missing. And resources. So one of the things that UFly does is includes high frequency words or irregularly spelled words into the sequence of instruction. So we looked at the high frequency words in foundations. We looked at the high frequency words in Teachers College. We looked at them from Tipping the Balance. We looked at the power words in this resource, and we came up with list 1, 2, and 3, or A, B, and C. We haven't finalized how we're going to call it yet, but we have created a list for Groton that includes the irregularly spelled words that we want our kids in K-3 to be learning. And one of the shifts that we're making is we're going to be teaching them how to orthographically map the sounds and not just memorize them. So foundations, the flashcards, you know, the trick words cards kind of look like this, and teachers would just drill and make sure that the students could memorize them. And that did work for some students, but for many of the students in the classroom, that was just not something that was available for them. It didn't it didn't stick in their memory.
Yeah.
So we're going to be teaching them a different way. We're shifting how we're doing it, and we're hoping that they'll have a more solid understanding of the sounds in these words, which will hopefully translate into their spelling. So that's one thing that we are doing, and we've created a list. And we're also going to be teaching them when we can teach them when they match the phonics feature. So for example, in kindergarten, when we're introducing the P, we're going to teach them up. Or when we're introducing the TH digraph, we're going to introduce the word that. I can't remember exactly, but more or less, yeah, more or less. No, the is right away. We want the to come up right away. So for some of them, there will be a heart before the phonics feature is introduced. And then once they've learned that rule, that spelling rule, it will no longer be something that they have to memorize by heart. It will be something that they've just internalized because they know the spelling rule. That is that part of it. So Heggerty is a phonological awareness curriculum that we introduced a couple years ago, but this year we really implemented it, K-2 where we needed it. Not all 2 is doing it this year, but K-2 received professional development this year, and teachers have a manual and they are using it daily, either right before reading time, right before writing time, during their morning meeting. They're doing the lessons throughout the day. Some teachers like to just do it in one shot, but then they kind of go back to it throughout the day as well. But we are definitely doing more phonological awareness instruction than ever before as a result of the Heggerty curriculum.
And I'm very excited because our preschool teachers who have 3- and 4-year-olds and our pre-K teachers are also receiving training, and they will start early. So a lot of this work can really start with our youngest learners out there, so that by the time they do enter our K and 1 and 2, you know, we'll be a little step ahead with them.
Yeah. So if you think back to the rope, you know, we've covered the phonological awareness, the decoding, and then the sight recognition. So those 3 strands in that word recognition part. So that's really where we've been focusing a lot of our work this year. And the universal screener we talked about a little bit. Dibbles we found to be really quick and easy, and it gives us a great snapshot of where students are. This year we've piloted going into rooms like a SWAT team where all the reading teachers go in and kind of assess the whole class, and we're able to quickly see how the grade is doing with their phonological awareness, their nonsense word reading, their rapid letter name, and we've done some of the upper grades. We've done the oral reading fluency as well. So we are really trying to get a full picture of every student at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. And then for the students in intervention, we're using the progress monitoring tools that are part of DIBELS as well to really make sure that they are building their skills in those areas of need.
And the whole team has used core phonics too, all along, especially in intervention, and being able to find those assessments that really will give you more information to kind of get to, you have to identify the problem before you can solve it. So always looking to figure out what needs to happen.
And you've also probably heard us talk about Amira in the last few meetings. I think it's another universal screener we were piloting this year to see. It was very high tech AI, where the child. One of the perks of it was to save teachers time, so we wouldn't have to do this whole SWAT team thing or have a teacher sit down with every kid. But the student would sit in front of the computer and the computer would listen and grade. And it was pretty amazing when it works. We are getting feedback now. I just sent out a survey this morning to all teachers. They've been using it for a couple of months, 3 maybe
March. Oh,
okay. Just to try to get some feedback and see what's working, what's not working, to see if it was something we want to pursue. So we'll use that once we gather enough information on that. But that was part of the work we're doing. DIBELS does seem to be the way.
DIBELS is pretty darn reliable. Yeah. So.
And then shifting the balance is, Susan purchased a book for K1 and 2 teachers, and teachers all have it in hand, and we're hoping to do some book clubs around the different chapters, and teachers are already learning that they're already doing a lot of the things that the book suggests. It's really great news, and if they have questions about anything, it's a great resource So hopefully we will all continue to grow our knowledge over the course of the summer and next year and beyond with science of reading.
Right. And there's some short little webinars. I've added those links. Katie had sent them out. And so I passed them along, and those were very helpful, especially as I was reading the book, because it would really kind of entice me, and then I go back and recheck. So it's really important for us to do this work with our teachers.
That was a lot. Do you guys have questions for the?
You know that Andrea has a question?
I really have two questions, and I think that you may have touched on something on both of them. But as you have children coming in from all over the country, how do you handle that in terms of the things that you're talking about, which are the most successful? And the other question I have is, as children come in, are you seeing any trends where there are stronger readers coming in from places that use either what you're using or other sources of teaching reading? So
I haven't personally noticed any trends. We have a big military population at Fame, so it's a transient population. And in terms of what programs that they are using, I haven't noticed any discrepancies in terms of like, wow, you have so many more skills than this other student who's using a different program. In my experience, I don't know if you guys have a different experience, but when we do have new students, we assess them right away, and we give them a wordless assessment, we give them a running record, we give them a phonological awareness screener, we give a sight word assessment. So we really do try to find out exactly where they are and with their literacy needs. We give them a spelling assessment, and then depending on whether or not they need intervention, we try to get them in right away. And then we'll meet on them every 6 to 8 weeks, and we provide support in the classrooms as well. So we have interventionists and reading specialists go into our readers workshop, and we're able to provide even more support in the classroom in small groups or one-on-one, in addition to the pull-out time.
And in addition to the military, we have the whole triangulation of Norwich, New London, Groton, and even Ledyard and other places. So we do have as many as 400 students moving out in any given year and 400 different students moving in. So out of a population of over 4,000, you have a net difference of almost 1,000. So I think when we got the first blue ribbon, when it was Val School and CES School, one of the things the teachers all said is we get to know our kids really quickly and we know how to assess them. And I think that's the secret sauce, is really the teachers and the interventionists really trying to figure out what's going on. And I think after this work, we're going to even get better at it.
Dean, oh, sure. I want Andrea, then Dean.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, this is for you, Susan. And when you meet with the superintendents, you talk about maybe consolidating how the triangulation might work.
We talk about that a lot. We meet on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, Cynthia Ritchie, who's the superintendent in New London, was the first cohort in the master class. So we actually went out and had a real good conversation. And so she was the one who got me excited about getting involved. So I tried to sign up as soon as possible, but we're finally getting in. So, and the same thing is true with, all my partners, East Lyme all the way down to Old Saybrook, and, over in Stonington. So we do a lot of collaboration and discussion about what's working.
You ever consider using the same?
We actually are using very similar. I don't know that anybody has done this level of work. I was telling Fran Rabinowitz about it, that we probably should share it with the State Department, because that's their job, is to write a model curriculum. And that's what they did with the Common Core, but they really did it more in the mathematics and not so much in the reading and writing. So that does need to happen. That's the State Department's job when they get people, experts from around the state, to come forth. So thank you.
You just reminded me that we did look at the Common Core standards for the grade levels as well.
Yeah.
And they're pretty vague. I don't know. It's like the child knows grade level phonics instructions. So we really educated ourselves, and decided we needed to really decide what that meant.
And I'm not that answered Beverly's question. She asked, like, how does that change? How is it different? And I don't think that it is greatly different, other than we're emphasizing the phonics piece of it, and we're making it more static, and equitable across our district.
and ensuring the transfer. I think that's so important that we don't let it go, that it's always kind of with us. Like you said, Carrie, like it's so wonderful to see your children noticing it when they're reading and paying attention and saying, I know this now.
And we're really hopeful that if one student travels from Thames to Mystic, or, you know, if there's transfer between the schools, that the child will be able to join a first grade class and be comfortable with the phonics routines, and know, the teacher will know exactly where they've come from and what instruction.
Readers, you know, we talked as far as like what will travel with them from school to school. You know, they'll come with the same assessment. We'll be able to.
Speaking to students coming to us new, that we do have transfers and we have such a transient population, getting them into a program that is consistent with a routine every day is going to catch them up to speed so much quicker and make them feel more comfortable.
I think one of the differences, we always had word walls. And then it was brought to my attention, probably at Mystic River, I see a sound wall. And so now we're really developing those sound walls to go along with the work that we're doing. So I think that's an important shift.
I'm the recognized dean.
First one is going to be much like a river that just ends up in a different place. I'll throw that out. I've got reading sections in front of me, so I'm going to ask this. And I beg forgiveness of the people in front of me. It's no secret that English is not written very dramatically. Do you know whether that presents an additional burden? This is just for my curiosity. So if you contrast it with a language that's written pretty much phonetically, doesn't call it Spanish, for example, or even Italian. You imagine that reading teachers in those languages have a much easier time. Are you fighting against the spelling of the language? Is that it? Or is that kind of a minor?
I mean, I do, I you know, high demographic and high EL population in our building, and Hispanic especially, so Spanish. I meet, especially my third, fourth, or fifth graders, and I'm teaching them, you know, a very similar program to what Carrie is teaching, and it's a rule, and they love it because it's tangible and they get it. That could be put an exception out there, which have many of, unfortunately. Right. That's when they get discouraged. So yeah, I do see that. It is a conversation.
We've all figured it out.
Yeah. And then we're wandering through the desert, like you said, like that's
exactly. There are hundreds of words that break the rules.
Yes.
So many. So
well, at least it's not Chinese. So.
Yeah.
My second question is this. We're here basically on K through 2, right? Pre-K through 2.
Well, actually, it's K through 3.
Okay, I'm sorry, K through 3. I should. Yes, it's right there. So my question is, how do we make sure that any good work that's done at this level carries on at the other level? Because it's a relay to the grades, and it's not a given that it happens grade to grade, that the skills picked up are translated and added on to, and then passed on to the following grade. So how are we integrating this, or making sure that the baton is passed to 4, 5, 6?
So it wasn't just my elementary teachers that came to me. I had 6th grade teachers coming to me. And remember that they had missed like a major ingredient in their elementary. And fortunately, we have literacy specialists at that level too. And they're actually going into the classroom. They're really giving the teachers some new skills, because when you're a 6th grade teacher or a high school teacher, you may not know how to teach phonics, or you might not remember those rules. So a lot of that work has been done again with that team. But you ask a really good question. And that's how I started paying attention, because my teachers were coming to me saying, we need to do something differently. This is not working. Our kids really need more than what we have right now.
So do you think that's working? You're right.
I don't know what your question is.
No, I know, but they have any awareness of it.
No, that we have to shift our mind.
And we're hoping that if we bolster our tier 1 now, that hopefully the transfer will begin to happen.
But you're right, like it's not need to expand eventually. It's not as comfortable for them, for sure. But it's definitely in our radar.
And it's something that we are planning to embed, like coaching support for the classroom teachers.
This work is applicable to the other grade.
And the resources will be available to them too. All of the lessons and all of the slideshows and every resource that we create for the K to 3
will go on our website.
Will be available. So if they're noticing large gaps in their classroom, they can go in and implement the lessons that day.
I mean, you know, even a railroad train, they're all the cars linked together, but because the engine's moving doesn't mean the crews they have it. I'm sorry, you were.
Yeah.
Well, and just to think about it another way, like K-3, you're learning how to read, and then you start to switch to reading to learn. Right. So the upper grades, it's reading to learn. However, literacy specialists and teachers in those upper grades also have to be aware of all, like we lay the foundation and everything builds on that. But the work that we've done here, it's a scope and sequence, developmentally, roughly developmentally, how kids should learn how to read words and decode words. So if a fourth grade teacher gets a student who is at the CBC level, like they can only read cat, dog, words like that, then they can go to our scope. This isn't just these are lessons for kindergarten, these are lessons for first. This is a scope and sequence. It's just like I went through OG training for teaching dyslexia. We're working in a scope and sequence. So we place those kids, we figure out where they're at, and then we go from there. So fourth and fifth grade teacher isn't going to spend 20 minutes a day on phonics instruction for the whole class, unless the class really needs it, which right now with COVID, we might have to for a couple of years. But hopefully in a couple of years, the big work will happen in the lower grades.
And they have done mini lessons for the whole class, and they've seen that happen. I know that to be true.
One more question.
Yeah.
That's this. So kids come in all shapes and sizes, and they require different approaches to instruction. Depending on the kid, I get it. And one of the natures of math education is this kind of approximation. You lose a couple here. You don't want to, but in an ideal world, you've got a teacher or student. That's the way school used to be. Days. The kid went to a tutor and got the attention machine. Anyway, do you detect behind the differences in the kids and among the kids? Do you detect the presence, phenomenon, if you will, something that's working with you or against you? That is involvement, parental involvement, or anybody. Is that a large factor? I would think it would be. But I'm wondering what your experience. Do you feel something when you're working with a kid that's struggling? Like if only there was more engagement, or that doesn't really matter. That you can actually fill that gap with what you're doing.
I think we know that we have control over what's happening here at school. We don't always have control over that. Right. But when you can partner with parents and family support, those kids make phenomenal games. Absolutely.
The parents have the first piece.
Well, and that's actually one of the agenda items, Dean, that's really important to us, because that's the other thing. In the past 3-4 years, we used to have these literacy nights, and we bring families in more often. And I mean, they did have a window of opportunity when they were on Zoom to kind of peek into the classroom. And I've heard some interesting, kind of feedback on that, positive and negative. So, but I think that that's a key ingredient. And I know this board realizes that the family engagement is probably one of the most important things. And we really want to get back to that in a more serious way, especially with this. The rollout of this is going to be really important to communicate and to really give parents the information and sending home the decodable text. And even I remember little, bookmarks that would tell the parent, these are some things you can do when the child is reading with you.
Great question.
Rita.
My question follow-up to themes, and I've written it down. For our students that were schooled in Teachers College, and they missed out on the phonetics, the learning. They're in middle school, they're in high school now. You can't expect a social studies teacher or a science teacher in high school to go back and look what's going on with phonetics. How are we helping those, which I would think would be tons of them in high school and middle school that, didn't get the phonetics that they're getting now?
So I would say that we have the multi-tiered levels of support like we do SRBI in elementary. We have it in middle school. We have it in high school. We have literacy specialists in all those buildings. And we always had phonics with Teachers College. We actually, when we first adopted Teachers College Reading and Writing Project, the workshop model, we had the Wilson foundations. So it wasn't until kind of just right before COVID that we started using elements of the TC, but I think we always had foundations as well. So I don't think that was the missing ingredient, but I think the way they've restructured this to make it so clear and so accessible and so relevant for the teacher and easy for the teacher to use, and that they will be able to take these, because they plan on putting this all on that curriculum site that teachers can get to in a heartbeat. And I love what you were saying about that could be used by literacy specialists in the middle school and high school, and they can actually teach those kids probably pretty quickly, you know. But then Denise is going to bring us to another where there could be a disability in reading, and then you might need even more intervention and a different kind of intervention as well.
Any questions from the board members who are on Zoom? I also just would like to take the opportunity to introduce you to Matthew Schulman. He is our other board member. He said you were going to be here at 7 and you got here like at 10:07. I noticed.
I won't apologize because situations happen in life.
Yeah, we know
all
that.
of us. And I'm glad to be here. I may be plowing some ground, but I was not overwhelmed, but I came close to being overwhelmed with the quality and rigor with the materials that were prepared for us tonight. They reflect well on the staff and superintendent and on the faculty, our faculty that's working on it. I do have 2 questions. I spent much of the weekend on the internet, looking up whole language, why Johnny can't read, structural literacy. I mean, I spent hours and hours trying to fill up gaps. I don't think I did a lot, but I tried. And there were 2 elements that I think have something to do with literacy and reading that may be there, but I haven't seen them. So I want to ask 2 questions, and I'm not sure who I'm asking them to, Susan, whether it's you or the faculty. What's the role? The first one is, what's the role of grammar in teaching literacy? You may have discussed this, if so, I apologize. And the second, what's the role of cursive as a tactile learning strategy? I bring up grammar because as a substitute at a middle school level, there was a game, I was told to play a game with the youngsters, Mad Libs. Do you remember Mad Libs? You're probably too young. No. So what's an adjective, Mr. Schulman? What's an adverb, Mr. Schulman? And I'm saying to myself inside, oh, holy potato pancakes, 7th graders don't know it. But it's a serious question. To what extent does grammar play a role in literacy, and how are we dealing with that? And cursive. I know I'm a dinosaur, but I think practicing cursive and learning it, even if, frankly, I asked my wife, I never mastered it. But practicing cursive is a tactile way, it's visual, so what are we doing with those 2, if anything, and is that something we can work on together?
Well, the literacy specialists have been always involved in doing that work with our teachers, and we have a scope and sequence too, a pacing guide for grammar, really K through 12 probably. You know, we do have a pacing guide that we do use, but I would say that because of the phonics and the way that we're able to decode words, we're also able to encode, so it's going to really help our kids. But there are conventions that kids need to know, and they learn it early on when they learn to write, but then we need to continue to teach it even into the middle grades and into the high school. So I don't know, you might want to add on to that, but and I know that we've actually piloted Learning Without Tears, and it's a handwriting program that we use preschool, pre-K, all the way through. We had a 3rd grade pilot in cursive, and many of our 3rd grade teachers participated. The problem is that you kind of have to use it. You know, it's not one of those things you can learn and not use. And so the expectation would be that they use cursive, but I think because writers these days, especially in the middle school and high school, everything gets typed and edited that way. That's kind of the way that writing happens. So it was hard to keep that engine going, but we did do a pretty good job. And what this team has done is they've taken that as well, learning without tears and how the handwriting works to outline, so that piece correlates to the exact way that they're doing the decoding, so that it all matches up. So the teacher's not doing one thing in the the handwriting book that's not being done with the phonics. So we want it all to gel so kids really get that practice.
And does the balance program have good elements of grammar?
Oh, absolutely. It's a big piece of it in editing and revising. Absolutely. It's a huge piece. Yeah. Did you want to say something though?
I know it is definitely embedded into our reading instruction, separate from our phonics.
And writing instruction. I think it's explicitly taught in writing and practiced and recognized throughout the day. I mean, during morning meetings, teachers are talking about different elements of grammar. Definitely during phonics instruction, it happens embedded in guided reading or
I just saw a Jeopardy game in 5th grade because they're getting ready for SBAC. And someone picked phonics level 500, and it was a grammar question, and they had to take a sentence and they had to rework it to make it grammatically correct and make sure that all the conventions were there. So some of that, that was pretty old school. That was how I learned, so that they are teaching those elements. They have to, because it's in our SBAC state test as well.
We're going to come back to it as well. We're going to be reviewing that curriculum we already have and continuing to work on that.
Cursive, I don't know. We'll have to talk about that. I don't know that it's been outlined to go beyond 3rd grade. They might have tried it out in 3rd grade. Kids love to do it, actually.
I would say the handwriting though has taken more of a focus than it had previously. So
on what?
Handwriting, even all the way from TK, starting in TK, handwriting now has more preschool kids. Is now explicitly taught and really focused on in the past couple of years more than previously.
That was our OTs came to us, our OTs and PTs, our occupational therapists came to us and they actually use that program. And so that's when the teachers really saw that and said, wow, this is really very helpful. And so again, came to us and said, this is something we really need.
Kendra, I have a question about grammar. When I was an 8th grade teacher, we would spend the first marking period on grammar. So my definition of grammar may be quite different from yours. And when you say that you embed it in the lesson, what does that mean?
No, just for example, so if there's, for example, like a writing unit where you're focused on like a certain genre, so if you're doing like a genre that embeds like adjectives, like if you're doing like a narrative piece, then adjectives are really important to describe your characters. The teachers will bring in adjectives and talk about, what makes a good adjective, and they'll brainstorm different adjectives that will enhance and elaborate the students' writing. Yeah.
And the parts of speech are really taught throughout all the grades, and as like you said, as an enhancement, but to make a better piece, right? Whether it's fiction or nonfiction.
I would really like to hear what the middle level is doing.
Yeah. And then I know Corey had some interesting things he did with the new product that we are going to be implementing called Parent Square. It's a good communication tool. It will replace our school messenger. It's a little outdated, and this will personalize it a little better. Teachers at James River have begun it, and they've really been able to share information, everything from kind of snippets of what kids are doing during the day. But Corey was able to put together some pieces for his parents that I just was really so impressed with, that to really help them understand what the children were learning in phonics. And so, they would get this through this Parent Square. It would beep at them or do whatever it does and say, open me. Corey has something to say to you. Here's the latest tip for the day.
Okay, so this isn't an overview of Parent Square right now. So, but back in the start of kindergarten, we do a lot, obviously, with letter ID and letter sounds. And so I did a little video for each letter, and I would do everything like explain to them how we're teaching your child how to write the letter, how to make the sound, how do you make the sound with your mouth, little stories to help with that kinesthetic piece of it. So I'm just gonna pull up one of the videos. I don't know how this will come out, but we will see.
S is another fun one. So we talk about how when we make the sound, it's a small amount of air and it's quiet. So this is the small air sound. And then the loud one is zzz, but it's a small air sound. And we pretend like we're pulling a snake of air, a small bit of air out of our mouth. So we said, oh, smile like you're pulling a snake out of your mouth for a trick. And the kids love that. So that's why in the picture there's a snake. Okay. And then we talked about how snake also starts with S. So we do S, snake, S. Okay. Now writing's a little trickier. So we can do little curve, turn, little curve for the uppercase S. And then for lowercase s, we can do the same thing, but we're going to be in the middle, little curve, and curve back. Now, I also like to tell the kids this trick, which they like. So flying C, stop, drop, and roll. Flying C, stop, drop, and roll. The kids like that one too. Okay, and that's the letter S.
He'll put the video on chat so that you guys can see it. We do know that you guys cannot hear us online. In fact, it was actually from his computer speakers how we heard it.
And this was this is before we did all of this. Like, this is stuff that I've been doing in my classroom from the training that I've gotten with teaching kids how to read. So, and again, this was on Parent Square that I posted it so that parents can go back anytime throughout the year. And a lot of my parents said this was great because they'd be like, what I learned today? What'd you learn today? Like, well, not sure. And then I'd play the video and then immediately they'd start telling me everything about it. And then the little kids would come along and watch the video too.
So this is a way that you message your kids in your classroom.
So I did this as a post. In this case, this is a catch up. So I did a bunch of letters in one post, but usually I would do like a weekly update and I would attach a video like this is the letters we're learning this week. Here's quick little videos.
So this is so this Parent Square is only occurring in Corey Mott's classroom.
No, the Parent Square is being piloted at Thames River and by all teachers.
So
and staff.
I also post, so it's like, okay.
Facebook.
Do it.
I can use it.
Minor. Make it an email or.
Yeah. In the upper grades, I've been doing Word Survey, another spelling program, and I post every week what the lessons are that I'm doing.
And it's going to be rolled out to the whole district next year.
So that's the post I just did today, so they got an alert when they want that alert, which is like and Corey's showing you everybody just because that the parents will only get their classroom and you know what I mean?
Right.
So like the Dandy in our kitchen said, "Oh, lunch today you've changed the grilled cheese," so that went to the whole building this morning.
The important
stuff. Yeah, important.
It is.
Treehouse on here, yeah.
Okay.
I'll stop sharing.
So what I'm hearing is that the Parent Square is a form of communication. Is it kind of like Classroom Dojo?
Yeah, it's going to replace the reminder of the dojo.
Getting it.
Yeah.
Good job. It replaces everything. It replaces simultaneous. It replaces
because right now, if I had a child in middle school and in Thames River, but they also I had one in a different magnet school, there's a possibility at the present moment I would have 3 different ways of messaging. So next year,
you'll have your 3 children are on the left side that you can click on, and it'll go directly to their feed, what's important to them.
Okay.
And then you have the option to toggle between the 3 buildings and also the district level announcements too.
Okay.
And then there's Power School. So we still have Power School. You know.
Presentation.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. You got a little snapshot of it.
Yeah. Okay, but maybe come back to that.
Teaser.
Yeah, maybe we can come back to
Teaser.
that.
We won't get a teaser.
Okay.
And then looking ahead, we have still more work to do. We're not done.
We do still have a lot of work to do. I just want to compliment this team because the work that has been completed is monumental. We put a ton of time into this, and we aren't done. So, beginning of June, we all have a team meeting with grade levels of K, 1, and 2 across each of our schools. And we're going to be meeting to roll this curriculum out with grade level teachers. That's going to be at the building level, and we're really excited about sharing this with teachers. We've had grade level representation throughout this process from each of our schools. So teachers have had eyes on this curriculum or the scope and sequence, and I think generally the feedback has been really positive. So we're really excited about sharing this with teachers. We've had summer curriculum every summer. Thank you, Susan. It's been wonderful. We're really purposeful about that work and what that's going to look like this summer. And that is going, as you've seen today, there's a lot of things that need to be created, a lot of materials, a lot of things that are possibly gatekeepers for making sure that this rollout goes seamless. So we want to alleviate a lot of that stress for teaching. Teaching phonics because we want to make sure that phonics is taught and teachers are able to spend the time teaching. So we're going to be preparing a lot of things and over the summer and over the next coming months, I guess you could say. And then over throughout this whole process, we wanted to make sure that we are continuing to listen to teachers and listen to feedback about how things are going in contracts. Listening to teachers about order, listening to teachers about what works well and what's not. And continuing to have that process for the future.
We'll continue to implement professional development so that teachers are continually understanding the resources that are available to them and able to implement the curriculum in the best way possible. And so we're going to give them this permission prior to the end of the school year and then continuing throughout the school year as well, so that teachers feel supported. We're going to be digging into this shifting the balance. It really explains the sciences of reading and the research that has gone behind all these shifts. And I think a lot of it teachers are really open and excited to learn about. And we're going to be having book chat and really digging into that and understanding how we can tweak our instruction just a little bit, really emphasize the phonetics so that we can support our students. We will be digging into grade 3. Probably beyond that, at some point. And we'll continue to support our teachers through these kind of book chats and ongoing things, but also through our roles as literacy specialists being in the classroom. And it might look like modeling lessons. It might look like working side by side with teachers in a coaching way. It might be that we're providing resources or giving them some research or just some positive feedback or pep talk if they need it as they move forward through this. And we're really looking forward to getting this curriculum out there because we think it's really going to be effective for our students. And I think for me, that's where this comes from, because we want our students to get what they all deserve and equitably across our district, that they're all hearing instruction that's solid. Yeah. Like we know instruction matters, and we want to make sure that all of our students in Groton are receiving what they deserve so they can be successful.
Rita.
This summer, the main summer curriculum work, will you also be meeting with students? There are times for students, so in conjunction with the summer curriculum work, we'll also have tier 1 students or all students?
We're going to be offering summer tutoring for those immediate students. And we have been doing that since the pandemic, and it has made a phenomenal difference. For those students whose parents are willing to bring them, we're offering free tutoring with specialists.
At their own schools or where they are. Like if they're at a camp at CK, our specialists have gone over, our tutors have gone over to meet the children where they are. Yeah.
And so we see that difference.
An hour to a day, or
usually about 40 minutes because the K through 2 students like their attention span. But I do know that the data that we've collected
a lot of times we see kids like that summer slide. But when they are coming for that tutoring and that thing, and they're able to kind of keep that momentum going, which is super exciting for classroom teachers.
And we really give it to the school. The principal and the literacy coaches work together. They know who their intervention children are. They know their families. Sometimes a family might prefer Zoom, and there might be a tutor who prefers Zoom, and you can kind of connect them. But we do try to get them in face-to-face now. We think it's really important. But by them having the autonomy, not me trying to like figure that all out up here, because I wouldn't do half as good a job as they do. They know their kids. They're able to engage their families, and it really has made a difference, I think. And we do it in math too, Rita. Yeah.
Any other questions on this portion of the presentation? This was great because I read, and I am not a literacy specialist. If you could only see my grammar. Actually I'm laughing because Andrea does see my grammar, because oftentimes I'm like, can you please edit this? And she's learned a lot about my life. But just to kind of read this, but then to also to have you, I'm a visual learner and an auditory learner, so to have you guys present was so very helpful. And I know that we are probably, are we going into now hearing from Denise? I don't know if your friends need to be here, because I know that you guys are working really, like you've started work at a very early hour, but just in case this gets lost, thank you for continuously showing me why I'm Groton proud. The work that you guys do for the kids in the district is really amazing. Thank you. I have been honored to be here for 12 years. My 3 children have gone through the district. Just really Groton proud. Thank you.
I think I'd like to wrap up their piece with the principals just talking about that family engagement or anything else that we might have missed, so that, you know, if they all have to scoot, they could. But, you know, just listening to the principals about this good work, because they've really been involved too. You know, we've been trying to make sure that they're involved every step of the way at some of the changes and shifts that we're making, but also with families and you know, how do we get the information to our families? Maybe some of the things you used to do and you're going back to. So we'll start with Ryan and we'll just march ourselves around the room. Any other thoughts about initializing this and getting information to families and things that might work?
Someone in the room, perhaps it was on Zoom, asked a question about, so what's different, what's new? And from my perspective, one of the nicest parts about this work has been the headings, the PA work, present in our kindergarten, first grade, and second grade classrooms, and listening to kids talk about this, watching teachers present words and having kids identify beginning sounds, middle sounds, ending sounds. And just the discourse that happens in those lessons is really powerful. Pre-pandemic, it's not something I heard and saw a lot of in the building, and I think we might have tried to illustrate that. The work is necessary. We've really been able to get our primary teachers to buy into that work. And it's a 10, maybe 15-minute lesson at the most. We're talking about our 5- and 6-year-olds. It's just to hear kids talk about words. It's a strictly oral program. I think there's a lot of power in the program, and something that I look forward to continuing to support.
My turn?
Yeah, we're going around the room.
You'd asked about family engagement. I think someone had said it over here earlier. When we partner with the families, that's where we get the biggest bang for our buck. That constant communication, going back and forth. You know, something like this lesson about, you know, the letters and things, like all of the little things that we do that give them tools to use at home. I think it's a big piece of that. I think we need to partner with that. And then I think we need to keep in mind that this is constantly changing. And I know that was brought up earlier, but we're always looking for something better, something there. And reevaluate. So I think that's a big piece of what we do. On that side.
One of the things just listening tonight, a big takeaway for me is to go back to what Sarah was talking about, which was coaching. The literacy specialists have done probably a lot of work in intervention. I'd like to go back to that coaching piece. I can only speak for my school, but it's difficult because we have a lot of needs there. But you know, just listening tonight, and you know, we've got some teachers here that have done this work too. That piece is very important. So I think going back to that engagement of families, I feel like sometimes that was in the gut from COVID, but I want to get back, coming back around to some of those opportunities where we get folks in and, school parents would feel about how can I best help my student. So teachers do a really good job of that when we have but it's so difficult because you've got a dependent window with each family and it's a lot of jobs. So I feel like that's another reason. Super excited about tutoring this summer. We put it out there and we've got a lot of folks in the school that are very interested. So that is an opportunity. I feel like that's the big word. When you have those small moments and there's an opportunity to engage families, network, even if they're doing this stuff, and we need to be on.
As far as the communication piece. So they want to help. I know there was a question that came over here to say, the home piece of it. And they do, sometimes they don't know how. So not only for your first day, but to pick up the phone, call them, tell them what we're doing in intervention. They also need small chunk, right? Like work on this, really, or work on this for this week because it's working in intervention, and then they feel empowered. So to give them those small chunks. And we just at South Valley on Friday for like an hour and a half or something to try and make sure we are getting kids that we can get some too. And we're trying to like be creative with it and do like half hour reading and then stay with half hour of math. And so thank you to our tutors of many who have spent and do it. It's tutors actually. So it is that communication piece of just thank you.
Ditto 4 times. But this year we were really excited to start getting back to having our families in the building for some of our events, some literacy events and STEAM events, science events, and our parents are so excited to come back. And we probably had the best engagement, the best attendance that we've ever had since I've been at the school, because people are they miss us as much as we miss them. And so I'm really looking forward to getting back to all of our events so that we share what we do and we help parents understand a little bit more of what we do, because what we do is so different than what happened when they were in school, definitely even when I was in school. And they want to work with their children at home, and we want to help them and support them in doing it. So that's the exciting piece. And all of this is wonderful. The consistency and across all of the buildings, and knowing that everyone's going to have what they need in their classroom. And what's happening here is happening over there and happening over there, and that's great.
And we really want to focus on this. Will be our focus, K through 3, because there's a lot of other things too that are out there, but we really want to be able to look at our calendar ahead of time and make sure that we can incorporate this in our professional development and then in our day.
I'm going to recognize Rita and then
I was just going to compliment everyone, because when I first joined the board, and elementary schools we had, and everyone had different books that they did. So this is wonderful. Chris, you must remember all that.
Val does.
Yeah, Val. Yeah.
I think dedication to the staff, teaching reading, teaching literacy right now is up. They touched on from pre-K on up. But what I have noticed more and more is more of the joy of reading, the joy of writing. And I think it's more evident. I mean, I got the grade back when,
And it was like, oh, writing that. But now the children are excited in it. They want to read Facebook. They want to get involved in it. I credit people because they work really hard doing it.
My best piece of data is 17,000 books were checked out at Groton Middle School Library last year. Lizanne Johnson, you know, and she counts how many books are checked out. And they're really reading in middle school. And, you know, middle school and high school kids, unless they had to read the book, Macbeth, you know, sometimes they're not reading. So I think that's a good piece of data. I want to keep seeing that grow.
It's just nice to know that a child at Mystic River could go to Thames River Magnet School and be on the same page.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
That's a really, thank you for
very
bringing
good
it up.
point.
That's a really good point. Thank you. Matthew?
I'm curious, the parent and family partnering. I'm wondering how that interfaces with our equity piece, whether there is differentiation of parental partnering across different cohorts of the socioeconomic spectrum, or is it pretty stable across all of them? And if there is differentiation, would you all reflect on ideas that you can share with us so we can get more participation?
I think one of the things that we know to be true is that sometimes we have to meet the parents where they are and not always expect them to meet us where we are.
Possibly find that out, right? So,
Yeah.
so like you were like maybe perhaps like everyone gets the thing better, and then you get it back from the usual suspects, right? You get it back from the usual kids, and then there's this little pocket of kids, and then you start going, okay, well, maybe I'll talk to their teacher, maybe I'll talk to the social worker, maybe I'll talk to the like, is it what's their family home like? What's the language? Can I call them instead? Can I talk to the students? So I think all of us would agree that we start at like one level, and then we kind of like break it down and differentiate how we reach that kiddo and communicate at that family and meet them at their needs. Yeah.
Encourage your friends to watch the broadcast so they can hear the good news.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
You know how much I appreciate you. All of you.
Denise, can you start off with the distraction of people leaving?
Oh, absolutely.
Are you going to do that? Okay,
Sure.
Thank you.
And this has been a topic from our State Department as well, is to really understanding how to best identify for dyslexia, and the sooner the better.
So this is, I'm just going to let people go. I had a thought. Here's a thought.
I don't have that.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Susan. Take care. Thank you guys for having us.
Oh, gosh, thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Gosh. There you go. Wow. Nice job. All right, so the second field that I wanted us to be in is that we, along with a lot of the discussion, was around understanding when we did have a child that's identified. I'm only vaguely familiar with this because I'm not a teacher, but I am vaguely familiar with some of that stuff as a therapist and working with kids who have learning disabilities and how it impacts social and emotional growth. And so we thought it was a nice blend if we were going to have lots of people talk to us about what learning, how do we teach reading in the K through 3, but what does it mean when it's not working for some kids, and what are all those things, and what do we as a school department do to identify? And so Denise, it's good to see you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for that nice opening. So the State Department of Education has added dyslexia as a primary disability on the IEP form in Connecticut as of about 5 or 6 years ago. So the information I'm going to share tonight is from our protocol and our training manuals from the State Department of Education. I'm not a Mac person.
I'm back.
Okay. So we start with Scarborough's reading rope because, as was stated earlier in the presentation, the two different components of reading need to be solidly developed at an early age, hopefully before age 3, and that being language comprehension and word recognition. And you'll see Scarborough's rope shows how, when they're adequately developed, they are woven together to help a child become a skilled reader, what we call a fluent reader. And one of the reasons why I put this in the presentation is because when we look at students who are not fluent readers, we want to go back and try to identify where in that reading process they're breaking down or they're having difficulty, so that we can, number one, assess it, and then number two, target that weakness with explicit instruction. So the working definition of dyslexia in terms of the State Department of Education was just revised in 2022. This really came about with our new program of CT SEDS. We have new eligibility forms, we have new SRBI forms that really gather more data than ever before, that from tier 1, as you've heard from the literacy interventionists, from tier 2, students who are getting literacy intervention support. Tier 1 is the general ed classroom. Tier 2 would be an interventionist support. And then from tier 3, which could possibly be special education support. And we look at all of that data to determine if a student is or is not responding to instruction. Because more than likely, if a student has received a really solid tier 1 reading program and intervention from a skilled reading specialist, if they're still not making progress in those different components of reading, it's a pretty good assumption that there's something that could be a disability that's preventing them from learning to read. So our definition really focuses on the fact that dyslexia impacts a student's ability to read, specifically decoding, and accurate and/or fluent word recognition and spelling. So a student who has dyslexia is really a student that is having difficulty unlocking that reading code. The phonemic awareness, the blending, the segmenting, the rhyming, and then remembering those skills to apply to read fluently in decodable text. Just a few more notes. Dyslexia is neurobiological in origin. It's often inconsistent or unexpected with a student's performance in other areas. So often students with dyslexia have average to above average cognitive skills, and sometimes they have strengths in math. So this weakness in reading is very unexpected, and sometimes it's hard to identify because you have students who are working many times at high levels. And if they can gather meaning from the text, sometimes it's not always obvious that they're struggling with those specific word attack decoding skills. But again, dyslexia usually results from a significant deficit in phonological processing. So the difficulty in identifying sounds and manipulating sounds. We call that segmenting words, rhyming, all of those different tasks that we do at the young age with letters and words that we heard about this afternoon. So just a few clarifications. Dyslexia is not primarily a visual, hearing, or motor disability. It's not an intellectual disability or an emotional disability. It's not usually a result of lack of appropriate instruction, because we have in Connecticut an SRBI, or response to intervention process, that provides students with intervention early on. So Connecticut, we've learned through SRBI, students don't need to fail at reading before they receive intervention. The goal of our intervention program is to provide them that intervention early on when they're struggling. Typically, students with dyslexia, again, have strengths in their reasoning, critical thinking, concept formation, problem solving, vocabulary, listening comprehension, and social communication. Again, early identification is key, and as are the use of those effective research-based interventions. So we want to be using programs that provide students with strategies that we know work.
So for instance, Denise and I have partnered since I've been here with getting teachers Wilson trained. We had one teacher who got Wilson 2 trained, and that was like a dissertation. I mean, we afforded for her overtime to work through that. And even after she retired, she still does contract with us. So I think you have 3 or 4 teachers going out this spring.
Corey is in Gillingham trained.
I'm in the process. I done all the work for guys that can do a project.
For your fellow, to be a fellow?
For the associate level.
So there's so many levels, and you know, they can even get a level that is like one of the highest levels where then they can train others. So we really are trying to make sure that we cast that net wide for teachers who want to have that kind of training. It starts with a level 1, so really as many as we can, whether they're special educators or reading teachers, and even classroom teachers. And you found a program called Spire that the teachers really like, which is based on Oregon Gillingham. So really trying to find those resources that will work best for our kids and the teachers. I think you've heard that message loud and clear. The most important thing is the skills that our teachers get through the process. So they are teaching reading, right?
So just touching a little bit on the criteria for eligibility as a student with dyslexia in Connecticut. Typically, this is a student who does not achieve adequately for their age or meet their grade level standards in one or more of the following areas: oral expression, listening comprehension, written expression, basic reading skills, reading fluency skills, reading comprehension, mathematical calculation, mathematics problem solving. These are criteria to be identified, as learning disabled. And then we're going to break off into just specific dyslexia. Also, the student does not make sufficient progress. So when presented or when provided with scientific research-based interventions. These students also exhibit a pattern of strengths and weaknesses, which we talked about a little bit before. Often they have been provided appropriate instruction. We call that explicit and systematic instruction based on those essential components of reading, math, or writing delivered by qualified personnel. So if a student has come to the district and they've been homeschooled, for example, and they're struggling to read, we would not rush to identify them as having a learning disability because they haven't had adequate instruction. At least, you know, if the parent hasn't been able to provide to us what's been taught at home. We would want to provide them with instruction in the school setting before we move to identify them as having a disability. Because again, we don't want to identify students as having a disability if they haven't received the appropriate instruction. And we want to give them an opportunity to receive that instruction and to demonstrate progress before we determine that they have a disability. The student also has to meet certain exclusionary factors. So if the student has a visual or hearing impairment or an intellectual or emotional disability, we might look at other disabilities other than learning disabled. And then lastly, we want to be sure that if we do evaluate a student for a learning disability, that evaluation is comprehensive. That means that we're evaluating all areas of suspected disability. So here's where, if we're looking specifically, which we are tonight, at the area of dyslexia, this is new as of 2022. We just introduced this to all of our teachers in the fall. We now know in Connecticut that there are 3 types of reading disabilities that students can be identified with. And the benefit of this is that this helps us target our instruction to the area where the student is struggling. So the first type of reading disability is a specific word recognition difficulty. This is a student who has difficulty with reading real words, reading nonsense words, and that automaticity or that fluency of reading, right? So they're not able to identify the letters, the sounds, those sight words, those CVC words with fluency. They have broad oral comprehension that is good, and they have vocabulary knowledge that is average or higher. So you'll see the asterisk after this type of disability. Often students with a word recognition difficulty are identified as dyslexic.
We're hoping that these universal screeners will also shed a light that we'll be finding kids with this disability earlier on. And, you know, and also the training that we're providing for the teachers as well.
The next type of reading disability focuses on comprehension. So these are students that probably, you know, would test very low in their knowledge of vocabulary, their oral language. They have difficulty, you know, with words and language in general. So their area of difficulty, if they have this type of a profile, would be a specific reading comprehension difficulty. They would be identified as learning disabled. And then we have lastly a mixed reading difficulty. These are students that have difficulties in full word recognition and comprehension, but their reading comprehension difficulties exceed what can be explained by poor decoding. So again, these students would not qualify as students who are dyslexic.
But they would qualify as having reading disability.
They would qualify as having a learning disability in reading. So we've really, in our state, I think, come a long way in terms of better understanding of students with dyslexia. What does their profile look like? What should we be looking for in our testing? And how should we be, well, we'll talk about that next, how we should be addressing our instruction. That's it. So one of the things I wanted to share with you.
Denise, well, before you go on.
Oh, sure.
Denise, not that I want to sound like a dinosaur. However, since I am, I don't recall this kind of thing happening when I was in school. And I know that's many, many, many years ago. However, was that because those kids were just ignored, or they just disappeared? Or has something happened in the way people were receiving and processing information that has changed?
Well, I think that the students still had similar types of reading profiles, but we hadn't necessarily drilled down and identified them as explicitly, and then targeted the instruction to match their area of weakness. From my perspective, a lot of this became clearer when we started to learn more about scientific research-based intervention. It was called Response to Intervention nationally. Connecticut adopted SRBI, and now we're moving to a multi-tiered system of support.
I understand that. What my question is, has something changed? Because I don't remember any of this. You know, I certainly there were kids who didn't get it, and we knew who they were. And I don't remember this widespread thing. And my question really is, I know what we're doing about it, but when did it really begin? When did we do it? Because this seems to be multiple. So that was my question.
Well, I think Morton Gillingham has been around for a while, right, Corey?
Well, yes.
You don't know what a while is.
Well, yeah. I mean, part of it is that the kids have always been there, but these kids are typically they're very smart. They make up for it. So when you're talking with them, there's no indication that something's going on, because the challenge for them is getting the words off the page. That's it. So they make up for it.
You're not seeing, and you're seeing a slope that has always been there. It hasn't increased.
It's always been there, but the thing is now we have more sophisticated assessments. More teachers are aware that a lot of the teachers sitting here, and myself included, didn't leave college with a master's reading specialist. We went back to school, and that's how we learn more about it. And so now we know what to look for now, but the teachers have done this type of work. And now the goal is to get everybody on board.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I'm going to recognize William, Dean, and then Rita.
Yeah, so I just want to comment on the Orton Gillingham. That type of training to help with dyslexia is just phenomenal. My son, who's a senior, is dyslexic, and if you ask his AP English teacher from 11th grade and his AP English teacher from 12th grade, and told them that Joe was dyslexic, they would be like, what do you mean? You know, the Orton Gillingham gave him the ability to, you know, catch up and excel. And it's just amazing that that type of education. And I'm so happy having gone through all of this with Joseph, you know, years and years and years and years ago, but taking years of therapy to work through it, and the training and everything with the Orton Gillingham. I'm just so happy that we're discussing this today. And I want to recognize how the school has done such a phenomenal job with students that have been able to get the Orton Gillingham training.
Thank you, William. Dean?
It's one of these things, talk about dyslexia. For those who are not dyslexic, I sometimes call myself dyslexic, but I screw up when I write stuff. That doesn't mean I'm dyslexic. It's, you know, your brain's not kicked in the morning. It was put to me quite a while ago. It's a very gross oversimplification of the problem. If I show you an object, any object, card, tree, pen, whatever, no matter how I orient it, you know it's a pen, don't you? Right? You know, I just dropped it. It's a pen, no matter how I show it. We all know this. Don't think anything of that. I take the lowercase letter D, B, P, and Q. They're basic circle with a line. What I was told was, if you're dyslexic, not all dyslexia, but imagine what we know of as 4 different letters would appear to somebody dyslexic as the same letter. It's the same shape, isn't it? It's just oriented in different ways, but like the pen, no matter how you orient it, it's a pen. And they have to learn, you know, that is maybe thinking of one shape, oriented different ways. It's 4 different letters. And that's how I was told to understand something that I really had no experience with. How is it that somebody cannot make out 4 different letters, for example, if that's one form of an ability? So I think a lot of this too has to do with, for most of us who are not dyslexic, understanding just what, not just labeling it and describing it, but how do you experience this? How do you get this? Probably why it's taken so long to get here.
So I'll comment, and then I know Corey wants to comment too. It is in many ways a common misnomer that students who reverse letters are dyslexic. So we just want to put that out there. There are some students who do reverse their letters and they are dyslexic, but not all students who reverse their letters are dyslexic. Well, I said
gross over.
Yeah, there is a developmental stage when children learn how to form their letters, and sometimes we just have to remind parents of that and give them some extra practice and some visual symbols.
Yeah, another really good example. This is energy work. A good example would be thinking about your brain as a highway, and for the typical person, drive down the highway, it's nice and smooth. So when that letter E comes in through your visual information, goes into your brain, gets processed, oh, that makes a book sound, you spit it back out the book. But for a student who's dyslexic, their highways are all messed up. They got so many detours, they got so many potholes in there that the wiring, it may come in as a, oh, that's a B, you see it as a B, but by the time it gets back here to tell you that's the letter B, and then gets over here to tell you the sound, well, it mixes it up with something else, all the speed bumps before you spit it out, and now it's a E. And a lot of what we're doing with the U5, all that kinesthetic learning that we're going to be doing more of, is to help straighten out those highways, make those connections, and fill in those potholes. As I think as Wayne said, you know, dyslexia, through proper instruction, a kid can, just because you're dyslexic doesn't mean that's you can be quite successful if you're given the right instruction and you help smooth out that highway. That's an oversimplification.
Right.
What Corey was referencing as the multi-sensory instruction means that children need to learn those letters and those sounds through multiple modalities. So through the visual, the auditory, and the kinesthetic motor. And that's what a lot of our programs like Wilson, Orton Gillingham, Spire, Linda Mood Bell, those are the main structured literacy programs that are approved by the International Dyslexia Association and most widely used. Spire is a newer program. It's modeled on the Orton Gillingham philosophy, but they're all what's called structured literacy programs. And they provide students with a 10-step or systematic lesson plan. And that lesson plan addresses many of those components of reading. So they start working on phonograms with cards, then they might do some blending of some words or some syllables. Then they progress to building words. Then they would progress to decoding and sentence reading. Then they would progress to some pre-reading, looking at the phonemes and the grapheme analysis. Then they would progress to reading, sound dictation, pre-spelling, spelling, sentence dictation, and then some independent practice. So it's a very structured lesson plan that in that 45 minutes to an hour, you're touching with maybe one vowel combination. Maybe you're working on OA that day, you know, O-A-O. You're going through all of those steps of that lesson plan with that one vowel combination. And you're working on words with that vowel combination in reading. You're taking off, you know, you're showing the child the word boat, and then you're taking the book off. So you're manipulating those sounds, and they're practicing those sounds both visually, auditorily, and then they're spelling them either in the air or they're tracing them on the paper. So it's a very involved lesson. But as Corey said, with that kind of explicit teaching, students do make pretty phenomenal progress. And they're excited to move through the steps of the program and graduate and become more confident and fluent readers and writers.
And we hear that all the time with Wilson too. That they, you know, and it sometimes takes some time, like they could be in middle school.
Mm-hmm.
The March meeting, we had parents come to the mic, and all or most of them had something to say about the reading program that we have and whether it serves or doesn't serve dyslexic kids. So how do we square what sounds like a complaint or observation? I'll call it complaint, and what's being presented here today. Are we overhauling? Are you explaining what we already have? What's the degree of success? We did well. Do we expect that to happen most often, or what?
So we're strengthening the core, and we're adding components and really focusing on components that young children need to read. And everything we're doing is going to strengthen the reading of students who may struggle to learn to read. So everything we're doing, including using the DIBELS has a dyslexia component. So there are several subtests in the DIBELS that have to do with rapid automatic naming, letter fluency, sound fluency, word attack, that are specific, indicators of a child who may have dyslexia if they're struggling with those subtests. And DIBELS goes K to 8. So we can continue to use it beyond 3rd grade. And we can use it 3 times a year, and we can use it to identify students who are struggling, to target instruction, and then to monitor their progress. So everything we're doing from the DIBELS to the UFly to the Hegarty is strengthening the core.
And we're strengthening it within the workshop because we're transferring what they've learned in the separate phonics instruction so that it's actually applied, and we're watching and monitoring that. So it's applied in either reading or writing. So
I'm going to recommend Rita and then go ahead.
I was just going to say the new study for reading, because we just got them. I've been trying them out, and the new units of reading from Teacher College does a much better job aligning with the phonics instruction that should really be happening that time of year. Like right now, the readers in the current unit are CBC words, which is what the kids are actually.
And I have to say, the new decodable texts are like light years ahead of what kids used to read for decodable texts. They used to be very dry, very uninteresting, really kind of monotonous readers. The new decodable texts are like light years improved in terms of engagement, relevance. They're culturally sensitive, racially diverse. They're phenomenal.
And we're getting those resources from a lot of different places. We've really purchased them from multiple places.
I was just going to say, Andrew, this sort of goes back to what you said when our older son, it was mid-80s, and he was dyslexic, and I knew he was dyslexic, but the Groton school system would not recognize it, so we took him to Easter Seal and had him tested and so forth, because he could compensate. I mean, it wasn't until 3rd or 4th grade that, you know, they said, oh yeah, there really is a problem. So unfortunately, he didn't get the help, but he has a PhD in psychology now, but we were able to help him a lot. But now our granddaughter in DC, who's 9, she's dyslexic, and it's amazing progress she's made having that intervention this year. It's just remarkable. So,
and we're hopeful,
you know, I don't think in the 80s they recognized it as much, you know, back then. It just
right,
wasn't
when I was teaching at that time. We had
no, it wasn't, and it was really, really a struggle.
And I'm hopeful that we won't have to wait till a child is upper elementary or middle school to detect it. That we'll get so much better at it, that we'll be able to use these indicators, these resources, these universal screeners when they're pre-K, K1. I mean, Corey's done a phenomenal job working with the screener process for kindergarten, for instance, and the TK process. So just knowing more about our children coming into us, and if we can get this kind of instruction to them once they're identified sooner than later, that's going to make a difference.
Well, and Carrie Left's story is so, I mean, profound. So she has a student who's made significant progress. He's up to grade level now at the end of the year. So without her intervention, that student could have been a student who next year was referred for intervention. So strengthening the core is where we want to start.
We have to focus
because
on that
that's the curriculum that everyone receives. And if that's a strong foundation, then it's going to decrease the referrals to intervention and the referrals to special education. So this
even though there'll always be there will be some. I'm hoping there'll be fewer, and we'll be meeting the needs better.
Be freed up.
Yeah,
to work with those kids.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Matthew.
Part of what I read over the weekend was about the politicization of the reading wars, to quote what they were saying. And my impression of the parents who came and expressed concerns were that they were not being politically correct from any given point of view, that those were genuine concerns.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the question I have is, there seems to me to be a gulf. I don't know how big, it could be a very small gulf, I'm not trying to exaggerate, but there is some kind of gulf between what we're actually doing and public perception of what we're actually doing. And I'm not quite sure how we go about engaging the public to have a greater understanding of what we're doing. But I think doing right as we're doing is necessary but not sufficient. We also need to engage, to bring along, educate, engage the public that is legitimately concerned, even if their concerns might not be legitimate.
Well, and you've heard the parents talking about getting back to community and having more of these events, but sometimes it's just really knowing your classroom teacher and the children sitting in front of you and those parents. Sometimes the closer you're communicating to the families that have the children in your classroom, that's almost a better way to meet those needs, I think.
And I think that article that Susan was referencing at the beginning of the meeting about phonics, what was it? Why phonics?
No, phonics first.
Phonics first. To me, that was a very important article because it opened my eyes in terms of the legislation really wanting to ensure that across the board in every elementary school in Connecticut, that all children are receiving a solid tier 1 reading program. Because we know there are those children who go home at night and maybe don't have books in their house, and aren't read to. So the article really spoke to that, similar to what we're trying to do in Groton, having a similar curriculum in all 5 of our elementary schools, the state of Connecticut wants to have a similar curriculum in every elementary school. So every child is receiving a curriculum that's a a strong tier 1 reading curriculum, whether they're being read to at home at night and there's books in that home or not. So to me, it spoke about equity.
I've got William and then Dee.
So just to build on what Matthew was saying, with parental concern, there was, reference to other districts and how much, higher their percentile of reading skill at specific grade levels was compared to Groton. And I think that's one thing that the public might be missing is how unique our school district is and the town of Groton is. I mean, it's one of the most unique, if not the most unique school districts in the entire state. So to compare our data and stats to Darien and Simsbury is not really the best way to do it. Is to really look at how well we're doing with, how many challenging, unique individuals that we're caring for in the schools and doing great things to try and assist them and help them grow and learn to read and everything, the math and the science. We have such an incredible, unique, diverse community. And I think I'd like to recognize how great the district is doing in regards to that and understanding the challenges that we continue to have and work on.
Thank you, William. Dee.
So I recognize too that the district is different. Unique is a word that's used all the time. We'll just leave it there. It's a very special district in a lot of ways. It's true. I don't recall anybody comparing Groton to Darien or Simsbury. They might have, and I might have overlooked it. I can't remember. I do remember comparisons to Stonington, which again is not necessarily the same kind of apple, But what else are people supposed to do if you have no peers? And apparently, from what I hear, you're peerless. Well, then all those comparisons are useless. Well, some comparisons are valid. I wouldn't go so far as to say the parents are just imagining that there are problems. They do actually, they are the parents, they have kids, they are noticing things. I'm going to have to give some weight to some of their observations. I don't think it's all in their head.
I don't disagree. No, you're right.
And I think that's the children that are in middle school and high school that have missed out on what is going on now in our elementary classroom, they didn't get. So yes, there are problems, and I don't think those test scores, are going to reflect very well.
Let's see. Fingers crossed.
Okay, so I'm going to recognize Jay and then William again.
Yes, thank you. So Denise, I just want to clarify the screening procedure for dyslexia, because there seems to be a perception that there are a number of still undiagnosed cases of dyslexia among students. So when you say universal screener, are we saying that every pre-K and K student is being screened with this DIBELS? Or is it just students who exhibit some other symptom before they're screened?
So we're using a Hagerty screening for phonemic awareness, preschool, pre-K, K1, 2, or we will absolutely be doing it for everybody next year. But we also use the DIBELS 8 universally. So I showcase the data from the beginning of the year. I'm going to be showcasing at the end of the year. So you'll see, but that's all of our children and hence going forward. We did used to, Jay, use it for intervention when kids started to struggle. We would use that DIBELS 8 assessment, but now we're doing it. And then we've used the Brigance for concepts about print. So we've used a lot of nationally normed assessments and resources to help us understand children when they early on in education, when they first come to us. Did you want to say anything about that?
Well, yeah, like universal screeners, like dyslexia there isn't one test that just says, yep, you're dyslexic. Honestly, there's several indicators, and so a universal screener like the Dibbles, everyone in kindergarten gets it. And we're just looking for those indicators along with other assessments, other observations that teachers make throughout across the board on it, writing, everything.
It's kind of like when you go to the doctors and they take your blood pressure, they check your heart, they do those universal screeners. And then if they hear or see something that could be an indicator, then that we do further, like we use that core phonics and we use other assessments then to help us really find out what's going on.
So Jay, as of July 1st, we have to identify a universal screener for grades K through 3. And we want to identify a universal screener that will identify all of those components of reading that we talked about on Scarborough's reading road. And at this point, we feel that the Dibbles meets that. It is on the approved list from the state, and it does address every area except for comprehension at the kindergarten and grade 1 level, because it's not developmentally appropriate.
But we would use other things like a decodable text, and teachers have always done a running record where they sit and listen to the child read and they notate the mistakes that they're making and where they're struggling. So that will continue, but with the decodable text, so we'll get valuable information.
Jay, did you have a follow-up question to that?
Yes, I just wanted to thank you for the clarification about that. And then I don't want to get ahead of what may be in the rest of the presentation, but we talk about the new deadlines from the state, and I'm just curious. So the universal screener goes in by July 1st, and I understand that in their wisdom, they've selected 6 publishers for the reading curriculum. So I'm just curious, are we looking at trying some of those other
I asked each company to send them, but actually I've had parents of children with dyslexia and other professionals, including the CAPS, heads, Fran Rabinowitz, who sat on the panel, and not one of those they felt was really as valuable as what we're doing in creating our model curriculum and teaching authentically and giving teachers the training. So they're more like a basal textbook with, if you're in 3rd grade, I think Judy Moody is one of the stories, and the whole class reads Judy Moody, and I don't see any phonics in there at all. So I really have concerns of an HMH publisher, some publishers, if you find out who's going to be making a lot of money, but I am, for my own sake, taking a look at it, and I haven't paid a dime for them, but they have shared with me, and I have a sample here that, yeah. No, I don't.
Jay, does that answer your question?
Yeah, if you'll just indulge me one more thing. I've been trying to keep quiet so as to not interrupt the flow, but my concern is, given the number of districts who are applying for waivers, is the state considering going back and reviewing? Have you heard anything from the state on reviewing their decision to just go with these 6 publishers?
So one of the concerns both Fran Rabinowitz and I have is that the same group that rolled out CT sets abysmally, PCG, they are the group that they've hired to do the reading waivers. So good luck with that one.
And is there a date?
No dates.
It was submitted in February. Nothing.
No, there's no word.
No, but I mean, when the state of Connecticut wanted to have districts adopt those 6.
No, they've been put it off for a whole year. That went through legislation, so they've given themselves more time. So, and they say they will work with districts, with the waiver process. So, like I said, I'm very proud of the work that our staff has done, and that's really the work that should have been done at the state level to really roll out a model curriculum like we have proposed. So I can't wait to show them.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I chose the 2 of the best, performing school districts When I mentioned,
didn't say New Canaan.
Yeah, I didn't say New Canaan.
from.
I went with Darien. I'm so sorry.
That's right.
But
I've
really
been talking to them too.
is giving the community a reference of what our community is like, how diverse our community is, the student body that we have, and who to really compare it to, and how we're doing. And when you do look at the data of the school districts that we are comparable to, we're one of the top, which is just something that's excellent and we need to recognize. I don't think the community understands that. And so that's what I was trying to bring up. So thanks.
Don't get me. But I'm always looking for improvement. So I'm really feeling that this is going to really serve us well. We train these teachers really well, and we expect it. I do the walkthroughs, I get the master class training, and it's going to be a heavy lift. The teachers are right. It's been a hard year for them, but they've actually come to me with some solutions that have been wonderful.
Well, we have this time now to plan our PD days in the summer and for when we return, those 2 days before school starts. So we'll have time
and
to roll it
TLI
out.
day we'll focus on.
I would recognize Beth.
I will say it's been a hard year, but it's been a rewarding year. And things that we were maybe doing in snippets here and there, it's solidifying and it's spreading across the district, which is very uplifting. I can tell you, I did Haggerty as soon as we heard about it, and I did it through the pandemic. I literally videoed myself doing the Haggerty lesson, which is hysterical because you're staring at yourself in a computer monitor. And my students did that, and the parents they loved it because they could put it on for their kids, and they're like, oh, I learned a thing or two too. And then when we came back to see that growth that the kids made with Haggerty and explicit phonics, my kids this year are phenomenal. So it's going to take some time for these kids to trickle up through, that have these really solid foundations. But I think this work is exciting work, and it's positive work, and it's much needed work, and we're in it. I think Corey can attest to that too. That this is good stuff. Yeah, that we're doing, especially with our littlest learners. I mean, my guys can tell you that OW and OU will both say the ow sound. They can tell you what a digraph is. They can tell you what a blend is. So it's the things that they're doing. And I know it's Andrea's heart is swelling with pride.
And then when they go to write, they'll use it.
This is kindergarten. We're doing onsets and rhymes and all sorts of things. And I have to say, it's my favorite part of the day. And I hear them transfer this when they're writing. They're like, oh, wow, or that's an ow sound. And they go to our vowel valley and they find which one it could be. And so it is hard work, but it's good work.
What I am so impressed about is the amount of the teachers are excited. Like when you've got what you need to do your craft and do it well,
and you're doing
good work.
Yeah. And when you can come to central office and you can say, hey, things aren't going well. We need help. We need to do things differently. And we say, all right, so what is it you need? Boots on the ground.
All right.
Yeah. And
I give you time.
And I did. I shared that book, Shifting the Balance, with
I bought it right away.
And I was like, you need to do this as a summer read.
Yeah.
And
took it to the beach.
It is one of those books that really spoke to me as a teacher. And I knew it's something, when you read something and you know that this is where we need to go. And it's exciting. It's an exciting time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
I just continue.
Oh, please.
I just wanted to say I really appreciate it's coming out and hearing from them, because that's when you want to know.
Right.
Look what it did for us, right?
Well, so we've done coffee chats at all of our schools with our teachers. We're going to do a coffee chat with our juniors and seniors at high school, where we just sit and listen. And I've had parents come in to see me, and I think we're going to do a coffee chat here and just send it out to parents and say, come join us. All we'll do is listen. Just tell me your story, because I won't know until I've heard the story from parents.
Jay.
Yeah, I also want to say thank you to everyone who came out tonight. I think one of the misconceptions, and probably I had it, and maybe some of our parents do, is that somehow our reading program is monolithic, that there's just this one method that the state doesn't approve of because it's not on the list that they've approved, this week. But in reality, there are so many more pieces to it. And obviously each one of them is evolving. And so I appreciate this peek at how it all works. And I'm very glad that the teachers are, directly involved with the evolving curriculum. It's not being just handed down from on high. And I hope the state will come around and understand the value of their work.
Thank you, Jay. That was a nice, that's a nice summer.
So before I say motion to adjourn, let me just say that I learned tonight that the dibble is in the details.
And
motion to adjourn.
Second. I have William as a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Abstain. Motion is carried. Good night, folks. Please remember Wednesday at 7.
Yes. RTM, get our budget through.